All right. So today what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about some more statistical definitions and some ideas that you need in order to be able to do some basic stats work, statistical work. And it's really important that you understand what's being asked of you and what kind of information you're being asked to provide and what kind of information you're given. Okay, so we're going to talk through some of those definitions. Now remember, I expect notes.
Can everyone please mute themselves apart from the teacher?
Yeah,
yes, please, because otherwise
a lot of noise. A lot of noise going on. Okay, I expect notes and examples. Take your notes carefully, right? Like we've talked about. Now I'm going to write these on the book because so I'm not bouncing back and forth. But you should have your paper out and make sure your notes are organized, especially when we're doing some things like where we're doing so many definitions. All right, so I'll give you simplified definitions. You don't have to write out the huge long definitions that they give you, right? And also, on a lot of these examples are going to be big sentences, so you can write some little abbreviated notes about that. Okay. Because it's not just all pure math where you're just adding or multiplying or dividing or whatever. Okay?
I'm using my computer.
Perfectly fine. Okay? All right. Good deal. All right. So what we're going to do is just go to the OneNote and take a look at these. So here we go. So we're talking about collecting data. Data just means any kind of information, right? And so we're talking about gathering statistical data about a particular group or population. So that's our first word. Our first term is the term population. And you can boil that definition down to who or what we are asking about. Now you can change it to your own wording if you like, but a target population is the group of things or people we're interested in finding information about. Okay? It doesn't always mean people, but it could be. So, for example, I could ask you, okay, I would want to find out how many of you had bacon and eggs for breakfast. Okay? So I'm asking you would be my population, this particular class, and I'm asking you a specific question. So if you look at some of their examples, finding out the color of cats in a particular pet store. Okay? Or finding out the ages of people who live in New Zealand. So we're asking about a specific thing in a specific place. Specific thing, specific place. Okay? So your population needs to be very well defined. And those two populations, the pet store and the people living in New Zealand, are the target populations. Now, the color of cats and the ages are what we're asking. Okay? So remember, this is the who or the what is the population. Not the idea of that we're asking about, not the question we're asking, but who. Okay? Any questions about population? You've heard that word plenty of times. You know it means a group of people. Okay.
Yeah.
Or things. Okay? So here you're talking about a population, and excuse me. The next word we're going to talk about is this word, something called a census. Okay? Now, a census is when we collect data about every thing or individual in the population. So census means everyone or everything. Right? So if I'm taking a census, I would have to ask about the color of cats in every pet store in a particular city or country or whatever. Right? If I'm talking about the population of New Zealand, I have to ask everyone in New Zealand that question. If I'm talking about everyone at Queen Margaret, I have to ask everyone at Queen Margaret that question. Everybody might not reply, but everyone is asked. Okay? And hopefully everyone replies. Okay? So that's a census when you're talking about everyone or everything. Okay? Now, we also will be looking at data where we're talking about a sample. And a sample is only when you have a part of the target population. Okay? Because if you think about it, if I wanted to know how tall people in New Zealand are, is it really practical to go and ask every single person in New Zealand how tall they are? Not really, right?
No.
Yeah, it'd be very difficult, probably impossible. Now, if it's a small group, what if I was in class and we were back in class and I wanted to know how tall all of you are? Would that be possible to measure?
Yes.
Sure. So if it's a small group, you can usually measure the entire population, but we usually just use a sample because it's either impossible or impractical to use the entire population. So now, okay, so you can use the population or you can use a sample. If you use the population, the entire population, it's called a census. Okay? Now, when we're talking about samples, we need to explore this idea that it's unbiased. In other words, we have to be equally likely. Right? So if I'm asking about ages of people in New Zealand, I shouldn't ask just in our classroom, right? Because there are older people and younger people than you guys, yeah?
Yeah.
I would get a very wrong opinion about the ages of the people in New Zealand if I just asked the people in the class, right? And the same with if I just asked the people in the school. Do you think the ages of the people in school would be a good sample for all of the people in New Zealand?
All the people in New Zealand?
No, because most of the people there would be just school aged, right? There are a lot more older people or very young people that wouldn't get counted then. Okay? So when you're talking about your sample, you have to be, every person in your population has to be equally likely to be selected. Okay? Now, so if you just asked in the school, that's called a biased sample. You have some prejudice. It's going to mess with your data. It's not going to give you good data. Okay? Now, then their example, what if they just went to a shopping center at the weekend and started asking people? Would that be a good sample?
No. Yeah. Oh, it might be.
It'd be okay. Still wouldn't be. I still don't think it would be the best sample. But would you be more likely to get a different population group than if you asked at school?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I still think you're right. I don't think that's a very good sample at all because I know my grandmother would never go to a shopping mall. Okay. So, and besides, most people don't take their little babies either, do they? So you'd be missing big chunks of the population.
Yeah.
If you did that. Good job. Think about that because that's exactly the kind of question you're going to be asked in this particular section. Okay. So for a summary, the population is the whole group we're interested in. It can be people, could be things. A census is a collection of data from the whole population, right? And a sample is a collection of data from a part of the population. And if you're going to do a sample, you have to make sure that your sample is very well defined. Okay? I can't say the average age in New Zealand is 13 because I looked at one class and the average age was 13. I would need to be very specific about it if I used a sample. Okay? So let's look at some examples of a question from the book. Ellen wanted to know the mean height. Mean is the same as saying what word?
Average.
Mean is average, right? That's the one we normally think of when we say average. Okay, guys? Yeah, if you mute your microphones, please. All right, so she wanted to know the mean height of the year 8 students at her school. So the year 8 students at her school, those are the population. That's the people that she's looking at, right? She measured students in her year 8 class. Now, are the students in her year 8 class all of the year 8 students at the school, you think?
No.
No, and that's why it's marked in green there as a sample, right? So the population is all the year 8 students at her school. The samples she's going to be looking at are the ones from her year 8 class. Do you see how it works? Now, okay?
Yeah.
Good. And what if she was measuring heights of year 10 students, but she measured the ones in her year 8 class? Would that be a good sample? No. Right, there you go. Good. Make sure that your sample is representative of your population. Excellent. Okay, so she got the following results in centimeters. So you see all those different numbers there. And so we're going to use that sample to estimate the mean height of the year 8 students at school. Now notice it says estimate. So if you look at that, it looks like they're all about 150 to 160 or somewhere. So maybe about 155. Maybe a little bigger. What are you thinking? Just by glancing at the numbers. Don't do the math. Just look at the numbers. What do you think? Think 155 would be a pretty good estimate?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's very few below it, and there about half of them are below it, half of them are above it. So about 155, maybe 156.
I think 156.
Yeah, maybe a little higher because there's several in the 160s, right? So maybe 156, maybe even 157, but somewhere in that range. Remember, when you're doing an estimate, it's not an exact value. Okay? All right. Do you think that estimate will be accurate? Well, it's as accurate as your guessing was, as your analysis of the number, right? Okay? Mm-hmm. The best you can do. Okay? So remember, if it's an estimate, I don't want to see the math. If you get the exact number it should be and you were asked for an estimate, it's going to be wrong. Remember?
Yeah.
You got to watch out for the word estimate. And you also have to be ready to explain your thinking. So there are 30 students in the sample. They actually did the math. Oh, look at that. Our mean was 156. You were exactly right. Okay? So the mean height, okay, so they just added them all up, divided by 30, and got the actual one. Okay? And the sample is a reasonable size. There's no reason to expect any bias. So it should be accurate. Okay? Because look how many numbers. There were 30 different students in the class. Now, what if there were only 5 students in her class? Do you think that would be a good sample?
Definitely not.
No, there's not enough of them, right? Typically, we need at least 30. Okay? Good job. Okay. So, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the task, and just so you can get an example of what it is that we're going to be doing in this particular task, right? So here we are. It's term 2, week 5, lesson 13 and 14. So the task is exercise 18E. And we're just going to ask some questions. And we're going to go through a few of them together, and then you can work on the rest of them on your own, just so you can be sure. Okay? Oops. All right. State whether it's a census or a sample for the investigation. A country of origin of the parents of the students in your class. Would that be a census or a sample?
Census.
Yeah, because you're only interested in the students in your class. So you could ask everybody that question, right? Good job. The number of people in Canada who are concerned about global warming.
Sample.
Yeah, we just go and get a sample of those because it's not likely that we're going to ask every single person. Okay?
Yeah.
All right, good. All right, explain any bias in the following samples. Determine the proportion of English people who can swim. Bill surveys a selection of people at a local swimming pool. So did he pick a good sample if he was asking for all the people in England who can swim if he goes to the pool? No. Because people who can't swim aren't likely to be at a swimming pool, are they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Some of them might be because they could be like me taking lessons, but not always.
Yeah.
Okay? All right, look at number 3. Mara's interested in finding the average member site for gyms around the world. She randomly selected 4 gyms and found the average numbers. Okay? Use these results to predict the numbers of gyms for New Zealand. So predicting the mean. Okay? But what about the reliability of your prediction? All the gyms in New Zealand?
It's not reliable because...
Yeah, because it's only 4 gyms.
Right. There are a lot more than 4 gyms in New Zealand, right? So only choosing 4 is not really going to be very reliable. You can still estimate an average or a mean, but it's not going to be very reliable if you only choose 4. Okay, look at 4. Cindy wanted to know what percentage of her youth group prefer drinking tea to coffee. So she selected 80 group members to survey, and then gives 56 preferred tea, 24 prefer coffee. Estimate the percentage of youth group members who prefer tea, right? So you could get an estimate, 56 out of 80, so it's more than half. So about 60% probably, maybe, or maybe a little less. Just get an estimate. How reliable do you think her estimate would be?
Is it reliable?
Yeah, I would think it was reliable because she selected 80 fellow group members, right? She didn't pick anybody outside her group. These are all people who are in her group, and she picked 80 of them, and 80 of them is a pretty big number of people, right?
And it's more than like 30.
Yeah, it's more than 30, and it's the right population. Now, what if she went out and asked 80 boys at Scott's College?
Not reliable.
Not reliable. She's picking the wrong population then. Good job. Okay. Healthy eating group, you can just say the same thing. Is you find the mean. Okay, this time they found to find the mean. Are you going to do the math or estimate?
The math.
Do the math. Find the mean means do the math. And then it's find out if it's a good sample and explain your answer. Okay?
Okay.
How does it look for you? So,
Good.
census or sample, bias, and estimating the mean. Okay? Excellent. All right. So that's... Yes.
Wait, so I'm a bit confused about bias. What is bias?
Bias means some kind of prejudice. In other words, you wouldn't go to a swimming pool to ask about people who swim because people who don't swim aren't likely to be at a swimming pool, right? I wouldn't go to Queen Margaret and ask about retirement plans, right? Because most of y'all aren't retired, right? Or I wouldn't ask how satisfied you are with your work because most of you are students, yeah? So there's some bias, some average, like look at the one that's 2B there. It says, to determine the average heights in her wheat crop, Jill measures plants nearest to the barn. Is there any bias there?
Yes.
You bet.
Oh,
what happens nearest to the barn?
It's a barn, so like there's chickens.
Chickens or other kinds of animals, and what do animals do that plants like?
They poo.
You betcha. Okay, it's a pretty good example there.
When is this due?
All right, so this one you should be able to zip through this one, so it'll be due the next time we meet, and
Which is on Friday.
Which is Friday. Okay. All right. So
We don't meet on Friday.
okay. Well, we won't meet physically on Friday. Okay.
What should we do when we finish? If we
All right, we meet
finish before the
today.
lesson?
Hold on a minute, guys. Hold on. Let me finish talking. So our next meeting is on Friday. So you'll have this assignment. Obviously, won't be due on Friday because we're not going to be there on Friday. Okay. So let me see. The second part of this is a class survey, and this is what we're going to be doing on Friday. Is you're going to be taking this survey. So even though we won't meet as a class, you guys need to talk to each other and gather information. Okay. Now, let's look at the example real quickly so we'll know exactly what you're expected to do. What we're looking to do is find the mean height of Year 8 students at QMC by following this example. You're going to obtain the height measurements in centimeters from everybody in the class, right? Because y'all are all Year 8 students. That's a good sample. Then use it to estimate the mean height of your students, okay? And there's a table in the collaboration space. So if you look in the collaboration space, they've put a table there that you can use to collect the data. Then you're going to answer a question about it, draw a dot plot about it, okay? And then you're going to compare it to Ellen's, because remember, Ellen was doing Year 8 too. That's the example that we looked at earlier. So then you're going to compare those questions for Ellen, okay? So you're going to do exercise 18A, and then you're going to do the class survey, right? And y'all can get together on teams and do a team if you want to do the class survey, or you can text the information back and forth. I don't care how you gather the information, but I expect you to have heights from all of your classmates. Don't need names, just the heights, right? which means that all of your data should look very similar, shouldn't it? Yeah? So if you get weird numbers, I'm going to know that you just pick some numbers out of the air or whatever. And it better not look just exactly like Ellen's, but it should look similar, shouldn't it?
Christian.
Okay. Yes.
How are we supposed to get the heights? Because I don't know my own height. And
Well, then you're going to have to get somebody at home to measure you. Or stand
But
up,
how am I
or stand up
gonna do
against
that?
the stand up
Yeah,
against the
people
wall.
are gonna know their own heights just by heart.
Well, you might not know it,
You
but
can,
you can obtain you can
Well, you can measure your own height.
you can
can't
measure
you?
yourself. Have somebody
Yeah,
get a tape measure
yeah,
and
but-
measure yourself.
We'll be having to ask people to measure themselves and then give that to us.
they
Nobody's
would have
gonna
already
wanna do
measured
that.
themselves because they'll be doing the same thing for their class.
Exactly, because your height better be
pretty sure
included in the
the-
results too. So all of you just simply,
majority of us
guys,
parents who
guys. Oh, my mute all button. Let me see it. No. So make sure that between now and then that you've measured yourself, or you have somebody at home measure you. Okay, so that you can have the number. I expect to see. I know how many people there are in class. I expect to see the results in the chart, right, from all of you. Okay.
What if your parents are working?
Okay. Well, they don't.
Then
Work,
do it
they don't
yourself.
work 24 hours a day. Okay. And you can measure yourself. Just put a mark on. Just put your hand on the wall or something and measure it or something. You can find a way. Okay. Don't draw on the wall. Get me in trouble. All right. Okay. So you've got. Boy, y'all are good at finding trouble, aren't you? Okay.